ERRY, Prod on Twitter. Check them out today. Blueberry Productions, great people, great work, great service.
All right, welcome back to the Bossman Show. This is JR The Bossman along with John Beckler right here on the Bossman Radio Network. We're joined by a Tennessean writer, a great guy, a guy who can inform you on all things Nashville sports, Mr. Mike Oregon. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's good to be with you guys.
Mike, recently you was inducted into the Hall of Fame with the coaches, Mike. I want you to talk about that a little bit because I know it meant a lot to you, and I know that you work very hard. I've seen it myself. So if you could talk about that right there, being in the Metro Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame, because, I mean, that's a heck of an honor for a guy that's like you, a contributor, a guy who writes about it and shows the city of Nashville about these coaches. So talk about that a little bit, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, a couple of guys who are already in the Hall of Fame approached me about 2 years ago and told me that they were considering me. And I was, flattered. But, at the same time, I didn't get my hopes up too high because, I didn't know for sure, how serious they were, how often they inducted, whatever. So I didn't hear anything from them for about a year. And then or that year, and then this year came around, and still I knew they inducted in November, and I still hadn't heard from them, and just thought it was nice if they at least considered me. And then lo and behold, about a month ago, they came to me and said, "Hey, we've decided you've been inducted." And so I was shocked, but again, as I said, I was extremely flattered. Don't consider myself old enough to be inducted in any kind of Hall of Fame, but it did make me feel a little bit old. But at the same time, I think I was definitely more flattered and honored to be joined in.
Well, Mike, it is to me an extreme honor because you hear so much, and I know up on the higher levels, the NFL and the collegiate levels, the relationship between writers and coaching staffs is a little bit tenuous sometimes because of the nature of it. The coaches are trying to do a job and they don't want to release a lot of information, and to earn the respect of that group of people and have them, want you in their company says a lot about the way that you treat them and the way that you cover the sport. So if there's anything that you can give to people out there as far as, aspiring writers, what is it that you think makes you successful in dealing with coaching staffs and universities and professional sports organizations?
Well, that's a fantastic point because that's it's not always a harmonious relationship. Very seldom is it between a writer and a coach or an athlete. And a good example of that is I covered Vanderbilt here in town for 10 years. And in that time, I saw 27 football victories, no bowl games, no winning records. And I'll never be inducted into anything to do with Vanderbilt, I guarantee you. And that's the reason, because it was a difficult assignment, and I didn't have the same kind of relationship that I did with those coaches and players. I had 5 different coaches over those 10 years, which is incredible, really, when you think about it. 5 different football coaches and 2 different basketball coaches. So it really, under those circumstances, there's really no way that a writer or any kind of reporter would have ever been, honored by a school like that. But when you get to a more broad assignment, such as high schools, I think the key to having a good relationship is patience and not being thin-skinned, because whereas when you have so many different coaches on a high school level, there are going to be some that aren't going to like you, because generally that's going to be the ones that are going to have losing records or struggle because you're reporting something that they'd rather just keep quiet until they find success. So you have to be, like I said, not thin-skinned and have patience, and just when things go wrong with coaches and your relationships get tough, you have to just hang in there until things get better for them, and then it'll get better for you in your relationship with them.
Yes, indeed, Mike. And speaking of how you saw those coaches at Vanderbilt, Derek Mason came in this year, and he's already fired Carl Dorrell and defensive coordinator. And Boise State's OC turned him down. Do you think Are we starting another cycle here after James Franklin gave Vanderbilt that glimmer of hope they had? It caught the SEC at a good time when East was down. They struck while it was hot. Now Mason's in there. He brought in a system. He couldn't determine a quarterback per se, playing 4 guys. Do you feel like this is the same old Vandy or Mason get together this time when he makes his hires for OC and DC going forward?
I think this is a extremely pivotal position right now, because I think that if they don't get it fixed quickly and immediately, then yes, I think they're in grave danger of slipping back into same old Vanderbilt. Not quite ready to say they're there yet, because the Vanderbilt I saw at the end of the season against Tennessee and in a couple, even against Florida, while Tennessee and Florida are not very good football teams, but yet they're still SEC, middle of the road SEC teams. It was a different Vanderbilt than I saw at the end of those 10 years that I covered Vanderbilt, because the 10 years that I covered Vanderbilt, which those years were from 93 to 2002, you saw at the end of the year a team that was completely dismantled, just in disarray, and also had given up, the upperclassmen especially. I saw this team was still fighting at the end and doing it, and still had enough talent to be competitive. So for that reason, I think Vanderbilt fans should have a little bit of hope that this is not the same old Vanderbilt. But at the same time, I think that if they don't get it fixed quickly and keep recruiting where it has been or where it got to under James Franklin, then I think by next year, or certainly by 2016, we could be right back into that same old ugly cycle.
Now, Mike, this is an interesting point to me in coaching staffs and the makeup of coaching staffs, and I don't think it gets talked about very much. I think everybody puts the onus on the head coach, and rightfully so. It's their program and their job. But the importance of their first hires, especially when you're coming into a program for the first time and you're new into that program, who you bring in with you and that first staff that you bring in my opinion, is critical to the success of that the program and how you build it going forward. I'd be interested to get your opinion, not just with the Vanderbilt situation, but just in general, how you feel it is, the importance level and what you personally might look for in your supporting cast as a head coach.
Well, I think there's 2 factors. I think one, it depends on how much control you're going to give your assistants, your staff, and if you're smart, as it's been proven in case after case, that you're going to give your assistants a great amount of support, because it's just too big of a job nowadays. Now back, 30, 40 years ago, maybe a head coach could have total control, but in this day and age, with the media like it is, with there's so many other demands that are on a head coach, they have to make speaking engagement. They do speaking engagement week after week. With recruiting having evolved to what it has become, you have got to disperse some of those responsibilities. So therefore, you have got to lean heavily upon your assistants. So if you do that, then yes, as you said, it's critical in who you put on your staff. Now, in a case such as Vanderbilt, I think Derek Mason came in as a defensive-minded coach, no doubt, having been a coordinator at Stanford, and he really leaned heavily on his assistants, which I think he should. But at the same time, I think he made some mistakes in the assistants he hired, i.e. Carl Dorrell, and he brought in, and so because I don't think Mason had much, if any, say-so whatsoever over the offense, and therefore when things started to fly out of control, then he didn't have any recourse. He had to continue to rely on Dorrell. And you saw what happened. The offense essentially did not make any kind of improvement, while the defense did. I think that by the end of the year, the defense was a little tenacious and playing so much better than it had at the start of the season, whereas the offense was continuing to struggle, continuing to rotate quarterbacks, just looking for some kind of answer that wasn't there. So I hope I didn't go too far around to answer your question, but yes, I think it is in this day and age more so than ever before extremely important for the staff to be competent and capable. And I think, at the same time, if you have great assistants, then you're going to be in dire, they're going to be in demand each year. Other schools are going to want to come call or will come calling on them. But that's just the way it's going to be. You're going to be a stepping stone for them, and then you're just going to have to replenish your staff with quality assistants each year.
And Mike, to that same vein, Tennessee State, you reported it let go of the running backs coach, offensive coordinator Mike Jones, who was stripped of his play calling duties after game 8. Okay. Whether we stay at TSU for Coach Reed hiring a running backs coach, or would Jeff Parker be the OC going forward? And also, I read on a 24/7 report that Tennessee was considering playing TSU to replace UAB. How true was that? And also, do you think would TSU ever play UT in the beginning game of the season? Because that would be a good matchup. This has never happened before.
Yeah, that would be. Let me start with the coaching situation first. I don't think it came as any great surprise that Rod Reed let go of his offensive coordinator. His running backs coach, it is kind of hard to fault the running backs coach. They did not have a quality running back as they've had for the last 6-7 years. So really, he was put in a difficult position. I think that Johnny Parker will continue to. I think that Reed will when he hires student assistants. I think that Johnny Parker will remain as the offensive coordinator, which I think is a good idea. I don't think you need two of those. Which they had before. They had co-coordinators in the past, and I think Parker will have that job by himself. And he did a good job once he took over the play calling duties from Mike Jones. I think it was after the 8th game of the season. They finished up strong on offense. They showed great improvement. Were much more effective and much more efficient. So I think Parker takes over that role by himself, and then I think Reed hires a quarterbacks coach and a receivers coach and a new running backs coach. The situation with the opener at LP Field with Tennessee, looking for a replacement for UAB. Tennessee State got in that mix because that's Tennessee State's home field, and it just made sense. And I think some of the officials from Tennessee State leaned heavily on the National Sports Council, which put that game together. And I think the National Sports Council, Scott Range and those guys, felt compelled that, that we at least have to present this to UT. And they did. And it was something UT, looked at, how seriously they looked at. Dave Hart, the athletic director at UT, would have to comment on that, which he's chosen not to do. He already was in talks with some other schools by the time Tennessee State got in that mix. And the situation with Bowling Green came together, so they went with that. And one of the main reasons is because Tennessee already had another FCS opponent on the schedule, I believe Western Carolina, for later in the season. So they would have it would have been another moving part there. They would have had to find another opponent for Western Carolina and then move them to another season. And they just didn't want to go through the headache of all that. Mainly because it was the opener for next season, so they didn't have a whole lot of time to do it. So I think that's where TSU came up short. Will they ever play? That's a great question. They should, that's for sure. If UT is going to play FCS opponents such as Carolina, then it needs to play at Tennessee State. But with Dave Hart now in place and not knowing what he likes, what he doesn't like, I'm not sure that'll happen under his on his watch, but it may, in the future. It's always a possibility. Now, let me say this though: with the way the college playoff committee has placed such a heavy emphasis on your non-conference schedule, and I'm sure UT is trying to get into that mix, then they going forward they may never play an FCS opponent.
Well, and that's interesting, Mike, because, I'm an Ohioan. I'm here in Ohio. And when Jim Tressel was at the Ohio State University, he actually made it a point to schedule, the Ohio universities, the Miami universities of the state, and try to play in-state opponents to keep the